whole perspective is like, as part of the architecture, one thing which I always look at is how do I make sure I design for security from the beginning. So this is where the DevSecOps really comes in play. Now you're going to find certain things which you are currently using or certain thing which you can use as part of your solution. That's the premise of this whole talk is. So even if you get 20% more, that's the way I always look at any talk. If you get 20%, if you get like 1% improvement in your DevSecOps with this talk, it can be successful. But you might have to write more than 1%, I can guarantee that. All right, so let's get started, guys. So first of all, thank you for introducing myself. So one thing which I have here is tinyurl.com/DevSecOps metrics. So you can write it down. This is where all the material is. You can look at it. And by the way, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on. Are you guys able to hear? Okay, great. We're going to focus on some portion of the work. So I'm not telling everything because this is like a workshop, which is kind of like 3-hour workshop. So you're going to put the important topics which are really relevant for you. So that said, what are the things which are relevant for us? Continuous integration. Yes, we all know what continuous integration is. CI pipeline. What the heck could be extra in this? So you will find out in 5 minutes what that is. Yeah. So it is not. It's like very much on the design side. What things you need to do and what things you can do to improve that. We'll talk about that in more detail. Then we have continuous deployment. That's where how the deployment policy should look like. What are the things from industry standard wise I try to ask us to implement as part of my transformation projects. We'll talk about that. Now, what is the main problem which we all have? We have to fix the technical debt. Yes, everybody wants to fix the technical debt. But when we go to the product management, what's the first thing they say? Anyone? What's the first thing they say? There's no business value. Yes? You face that problem, there's no business value. So we'll work on the KPIs which actually ties up to the business values. We work on the microservice metrics which you can now look at and see that how you can have a DevSecOps for it. That's where the business KPIs comes in, that's where the telemetry comes in, and operational excellence comes in. So that's what is our motto for today as for our discussion for 1 hour. Let's take a look at continuous integration. So now in terms of continuous integration, if you think about it, now I'm going to talk about the best companies like AWS you might consider as one of the best companies in terms of continuous integration and development plan. So these are the fundamentals which you need to follow when you're trying to build applications. So what I normally say is that build the core fundamental functionality, that may identity access management. So when you say identity access management, what does that mean? That, hey, what are the different ways to access? Anyone? We all know that answer. No? So this is a very simple thing to explain. Anyone? How can we access? Role based? Yeah? Huh? Policy? What else? Resource based? So that means when we say resource based, that means whatever the microservice you're trying to create, who has access to that? You're actually providing the detail. What else? Can you put in here? Anything else? So there is something called attribute based. If you have lot of roles, you have to move toward attribute based. That's the direction the industry is moving right now. So you search on the attributes based design and implement your access management using that. Logging and monitoring, when you want to do the logging and monitoring, now you have multi-tenant environment going on. How do you do logging and monitoring for a multi-tenant environment? That's the question, yeah? How do you do that? Huh? Distributed logging is good to have, but distributed logging based on the tenant which you're trying to use. So we need to be tenant ID aware. You need to be aware of the tenant ID. Yeah, so that's what is very important in this case. Infrastructure security is important also when you are trying to build it. Data protection. What do you mean by data protection? Huh? Encryption. So encryption at rest. So for what? For the PII data. Yeah. So what kind of PII data? There can be two kinds of PII data can be there. What are those kinds of PII data? One, you can search. You can search that data. For example, you have a social security number, you can search for that exact social security number, yeah? What's the other thing? What's the other thing? Another thing is like, probabilistic encryption, where you don't want to search within the content which you're trying to provide. And on the right hand side is all the DevSecOps principles, including compliance and vulnerability management and other things here. Now let's take a look at each of these in detail, and then we'll look at it. And then while doing that, you have to look at what kind of compliance you have. Is it a HIPAA compliance, PII compliance, or other data when you're working on it? Now whenever we try to implement any of these solutions, one thing to keep in mind is if you are 27001 compliant, I'm talking about when you're talking to CTO and you want to make sure that they are following all the things. If they become 27,000, how many here are 27,001 compliant? So if you are, you will be following all these processes, including vulnerability analysis and other things on this principle. The purpose of this slide is try to be 27,001 compliant while building your application. So that's the main thing which I'm trying to implement here. Okay, let's take a look at continuous integration and see what things you guys do and what things you might want to do in this here. Let's take a look at the design. How many here do threat modeling? Threat modeling, yeah. So which is good, like that's the right approach to do it. Input validations and output validations, both we need to do in this case. Cryptography, controls. Auditing. How many here are doing auditing? What is auditing means? That's not what auditing is. As per 27001, what is auditing? It's all the changes which took place in the configuration. You have to, by law, keep all the changes in configuration for 3 years to 5 years, depending upon what you're trying to do. So it's the configuration by who? By the users. If you're configuring your environment, you need to configure. It's not the data. It's the configuration which is supporting your application. By law, you have to do that. That's what the auditing is. Okay. So you need to create audit control. Then only you can do that. Okay. Another thing is, authentication, authorization principles, fuzz testing. Anybody doing fuzz testing here? We'll talk about that. Contract fuzz testing. Okay. Lint test. Everyone does the lint test. So that's something good to. Mutation test. Anybody did that here? Yeah, so that's another thing which we'll be talking about a little bit more in detail how to do it. Dependency checker is, I think you guys should all need to implement the dependency checker when you're building a solution. And then if you want to do the dynamic test, then you are talking about OAuth to implement the dynamic test and implementing the solution. Now I'm going to go over in some of them which are important for us to look at here in detail, because I know some of them are easy for you to look at. So look at the threat modeling aspect. So what we are doing is you need to first do what? Identify the assets. What are the assets? Tell me one of the assets. Servers, database, and web server, app server, database, who's calling it, like who's the customer who's making a call. All those things you need to identify and then find out whether there is a spoofing attack going on or tampering attack going on. What tool you guys use to do that? Anyone? Huh? Threat modeling tool you are using. Okay. So let's take a look at one example on the threat modeling tool. So this is from Microsoft. If you go to the link which I am providing, this is a threat modeling place. If you go in here, I have a link for the threat modeling tool also. You can actually download that and use it. Now what that means is that you go to the threat modeling and you create something like this. So once you have the application created, now what it can do is you can play a game based on this. Now what happens is that you are able to see HTTP, and this is directly somebody is making a call to the HTTP. What it can provide us is that what are the issues which can come in. Tampering issue can be there, or elevation of privilege can also take place for us to do. So the one which I created, which is bad thing to do, directly, this is a compliance issue. Just by doing this exercise, you're going to find out, what are we going to find out from doing this exercise? Tell me. all the routes which are vulnerable, all the routes which are causing us the problem. What that means is that Maginot Line. Anybody know about the Maginot Line? So World War I took place, and then France was attacked by German. So they protected their line, and they put like bunkers and everything else. And you know what Germany did in the World War II? They came from Belgium, easy route. So there was no protection, and nobody came from the other route because there were the bunkers there and nobody was coming in. So that is what we find out just by using this as a solution for us. Okay. So that said, one of the things which we need to look at is identify the problems and then mitigate those problems. Those becomes your actual issues you are trying to fix at the end. You can play the game. Also here, like Elevation of Privilege is just a game, which is a free game. You can download and start playing that. Okay, let's take a look at this one, which is a OWASP Security Knowledge Framework. So this is a OWASP Security Knowledge Framework, which I'm going to go to right now. You can Google this also and find out this information more on this one. So what you do is, I'm going to go to that first and then we'll discuss it out. So this is a security knowledge framework which is being provided, and OWASP is providing this framework. What it does, you can actually go in to look at that particular framework. Let's take a look at this framework together. Advanced. Yeah, there is a link to proceed. Yeah, I don't know why it does that, but this is still safe side. That's what I know. So what we are doing is, when we go there, how many here are interested in? So I'm going to log into this first. So you can use Google to log in also. You can just log in using your account. Once you log into your account, now how many here are interested in finding out, like, hey, what are the code samples to use? So normally what happens, like, when we are trying to work on any project, you want to do a login. Let's say I want to do a login, So I'm just making up what I'm trying. Java login function. So what are the things the Java login function should have? So let me make it a little bigger here just to give a perspective what I'm talking about. So this will give us an understanding, hey, if you are using logging functions, what you need to do, you need to use cookie, you need to use UUID, user ID, and then you need to log4j. How many here were bitten by log4j? Yeah? But that's still like, a zero-day attack took place and then we were able to do that. But the whole perspective here is, you're creating a hashing function, you're putting a salt with it, and then you're saving that particular user function and saving to the database. So what they're really providing us is an easy way to just cut paste this code and start using it. Isn't it better than we coming up with this code? Yeah. So this is very powerful from that perspective. You can actually go in and not only look at this code, but look at, like, any other thing which we try to do. File uploading. You have a project where you need to do file uploading. What is the best practice to do the file uploading? For example, yeah, audit logs. You want to do an audit log. What are the important things for the audit log? No PII data should show up. No user session information should show up. So what things we need to do to really protect ourselves doing that? So you can find out the information in this. So this is like, even if you don't use anything else which I'm talking about, just use this. Itself is going to give you, like, bandwidth of cut, paste the code and start using it. So that's number one. Okay. Number two, some people say that, hey, what is in for me to do from checklist perspective? Like, some people ask me question like, hey, what are the things we need to do? Let me make it a little smaller here. So let's take a look at verification requirements. Yeah. So we need to do the verification requirements here. Now within the verification requirement, what are the things I need to follow for the verification requirement, like 12 characters long? So these are standards we need to follow for our passwords. Are we following or not? If you need to look at it, we can actually go into each one of them and see, why this is important for us to do. So it does give us a great way of connecting. See, if I go back to the checklist again here, you can do input validation, output validation, encoding and verification. How many here does that? Encoding and verification. So this is a clear way of understanding what those are. Let's pick any one of them, read. So this is the HTTP. How do we do the encoding and how do we do the testing and encoding of that particular interface? Isn't that useful? Yeah. So that's another thing which you can do. The last part you can do is knowledge base. So knowledge base is another phenomenal place which I actually go to whenever I need to understand a little bit better what's going on. Is I can go in and find out. Let's pick here. So I'm just going to pick a simple one. What are the things I need to consider while I am in the architecture and design phase? See this? So that's what you get out of when you're trying to build this solution. Yeah. And then at the end they have labs. So anybody who wants to do a lab and you want to do the hacking, because if you would, this is not a hacking session, but if you want to do your own hacking without installing any Docker container to do that, you can just come here. You can say, okay, I want to start this lab. Now once this is a Docker container I got, so you can copy this, and then I can, actually I can go in now. Voila. So now I will be able to go in and then hack this session. Submit button. So it's able to, now you can hack this session. If you want to hack this session, you can hack this. So it has 3 different security vulnerability apps. It already has it. So you don't even need to download, but you can actually solve for all of them right here. So you want to learn more about each of them, you can do SKF lab. Juice shop is another one which is very, very useful. This lab is already running for me. So there was a Docker container which I used some time back. So it's already there. I can go and check this one and start using it. So just in 5 minutes, this is going to really help you from your usage perspective. Yes. So that's one thing I suggest to do. Another thing which I suggest to do is OWASP dependency tracker. OWASP dependency tracker is a how many here use white source? White source or what's the other tool similar to white source? Yeah, Black Duck. Yes, that's good. How many here use that? Yeah, you guys use it. Okay. So if you are not using white source or Black Duck, in that case you have to use this tool. This is the free tool I suggest you guys have to use. The advantage of using this tool is, let me explain you that. And if it is, the 0-day attacks, all the 0-day attacks, you have to find out that, if there is a newer version come in for your analysis, you should be able to find that version and be able to use that. So what it does is, it finds out in production, looks at all the CI pipeline, all the jar files, not only the jar files, it also looks at DLLs and all other files which are there, and ingest all the files and find out whether you are paying for that version or not. That's number one. That's bill of material. Second thing is vulnerabilities. Vulnerability scan. That means whether there is a newer version available which you have to patch. Yeah. Just by doing this exercise, you are eliminating the vulnerability. All the vulnerability attacks are what? 0-day attacks. What are 0-day attacks? Anyone? Yeah? Huh? Which is it? Immediately you can exploit that. Where you can go and find out the 0-day attacks? Let me show you that. There is something called exploitdb. Okay, if you go to exploitdb.com, so now I'm in the exploitdb.com right now. Now I can actually find out SQL injection. So somebody found out 427. Somebody find out, there is a vulnerability. How do I attack that? They're giving the details. How to attack also. So you can literally copy this and start attacking, around the board. But this one, you can hack your system. I'm not suggesting hack some other system. You should hack your application because we are white source. I don't want to tell you the otherwise. People will have a different understanding that way. So I have a workshop where actually we hack lot of things. So this is what you can exploit. You can download this exploit and start exploiting your site right away. So just like this, let me go in. So this one, there is a vulnerability, but there is a solution also for this. That's actually a good thing in this one, yeah. But there are few of them. This is the verified. This is not verified yet. But if somebody is using any one of them, there is a greater chance like there is a vulnerability which you need to fix here. Not only that, like, you can actually go in and find out, I'll tell you more than what is needed. So this is the Google Doc. So Google Hacking Database. Anybody know Google Hacking Database? These are Google Doc. You can actually, so the reason I am going to tell you is because I want you to be very self-sufficient to do this, okay? Why I'm telling you, you put site column and put your site there, okay? And then apply any of these things, okay? I'm not saying do it for other ones. It's because, like, I tried, like, in one of the sessions, we were trying to look for a bank, and there was something showed up with some password stuff, and I had to say, presume that you did not see anything there. So, so you have to hack your site only, not anything else. So now if you go in, any of these are actual vulnerabilities. Now this was found like in 4 IndexOf plugin. So if you put this in, you're going to get a lot of information. So if I just do this to a Google, so this is called Google Doc. So is this, I don't want to open this. This is the Jenkins. Someone said this is Jenkins out, this is Chennai. Somebody just keeping it open, not a good idea. But you got my idea. Like, if you go in, you get a lot of information. See this here? Boom. You can actually hack the whole site. Like, I don't want to tell you how to do it right now, but later on, if you want me to, I can explain you how to do it. But you got the idea. So I want you to protect yourself. That's the reason this is called Google Docs. You should go to Google Docs and try out whether your application is stable or not. That's what I'm trying to explain you here. So we discussed about dependency checker. Now you may ask a question, hey, how can I make it automated? It plugs in with Maven, NPM, any vulnerability, Jenkins, all of them are really available. And it's a free tool. So there's no problem about out-of-date component. This is what I really like. 0-day vulnerability. This is awesome. Fuzzing. What does fuzzing means? Fuzzing means like, hey, I am giving an input. Okay, so how many here, like, username, password, whenever a developer does the web form testing, what do? They always put good numbers, yes? What do QA do? Always put bad numbers on that. Yeah, that's what they do. So Google figured it out. Said, okay, developers can't solve this. QA can't solve this problem also. It's very tough problem to solve. So what you can do is you can do fuzz test you can do. What that does is there is a trust boundary which takes place. Front end, you bang the front end. You can't bang the back end behind the scene. So what you do is there's something called OSS fuzz. Using the OSS fuzz, Google found out bugs in their code, not in my code. Google found out in their code, which is 25,000 bugs were found in Chrome itself. Okay. Not only that, let me explain you. This is just the starting part. Yeah. Not only that, if you go into OSS fuzz, not only they found out there, but open source projects. So this is what I like about this, because they did that. Now what this does is, like, you're running your commit, and they are putting all the things, and for 850 projects, they found 28,000 bugs. You may say that, oh, this might not have anything to do with me. Not really. Apache, everybody's using Apache right now. Apache Access or Apache Common Library, they found out bugs in pretty much everything. You can see here. So that means HTTPDs, I think pretty much last week there was a bug which was reported, see this, there was a commit also done here. So this is the bug they have reported last week on some of these things. So if you want, you should explore how to do OSS first. So that's one thing which I suggest you to do when you're building the solution. Okay, you may ask a question, Rohit, what else can we do? So that's another thing. So if you see here, what are these? These are actually helping us implement what? Anybody have heard of heartbleed attack? Anyone can tell me what was that? Huh? It's I would not name the bank. People looted the whole bank. You know how they did that? They ask for like, hey, my name is so and so, and I am this many number of characters long. This is called as output validation. That's why when we started doing implementation, the OWASP top 10 were coming in. What was the first thing we were doing? Input validation. Finish the input validation, you're done. Yes, that's what everybody says. What is this? Output validation. So what they did was like, my name is banana and this is my characters. Oh, my character is 100 characters long. So it returned all the values which was in the memory space, heap space. When they return all the values, including username, password, their date of birth and social security number, everything they returned back. So and they became like the whole bank was like looted just because of that reason. So that's a pretty bleak attack. So that is, if you need to protect those kind of problems, you need to use this. Yeah. Another thing which you can say is that sanitizer. How many here have used sanitizer, so much sanitizer in past 3 years? It's like when the COVID started, what was the case? When the COVID started, oh, I'm going out, let me use a sanitizer, and then go out and then come back and then change all the clothes and put the new clothes on. That's what we used to do. And then after some time we all got fed up, like, okay, this is what it is, it has to go on. Now we are all here, like, I'm so happy about it. But sanitization we also need to do, okay, as part of our work. So what that means is you need to do the address sanitization, memory sanitization, thread sanitization, leak sanitization. So that is what you need to protect. And OSS first does a good job in protecting that. Okay, so this is another one. You have an original program. You have a program running. We all like to run, our Java code. Yeah. Now, have you heard of like, COVID has mutants coming in? Yes. There's a new H1B mutant. I don't know what the latest one is. Yeah. You create your own mutant of the Java code. There's a greater than sign. You make it less than sign. Okay. And you return the output. Now what happens is this is the original program and this is a mutant program. The thing is, when you run the test class, if the output is compared, if the results of the original and the mutant program are different, mutant is killed. Does that make sense? So our main purpose here is to verify whether our test is really running or not. Because what I have seen is like, I have seen in many companies, and this is normal, like if it's there in your company, you don't have to raise your hand, but you can just laugh there. But I have seen like there's all those tests. Yes, we have a code coverage of 75%, 80%. And look at the code, there are no asserts. Just laugh at that point. Have you seen this kind of behavior? Like yes, this is very common. Like there's not many asserts there. So when there are not many asserts, you change your program, they're not going to show up. So coverage is good. There is a check mark, we have a good coverage. That's not enough. That's where the problem comes in. So this mutant test is a very easy way to find out whether the test is really working or not. I just create a mutant and then say that, oh yeah, this test is not working. That makes it easier for me. And then the other part is cryptography, where we want to make sure we are storing all the files in a good place. I think cryptography, pretty much everybody knows about cryptography, so I would not spend time here. But from the continuous integration perspective, we need to make sure that we are saving the data both either using symmetric encryption or asymmetric encryption. Yeah. So that is one thing which I always suggest to do. Now people ask me a question like, how can I protect from security perspective? That's what the question asks. Is it TLS? Use the TLS. Yeah. But if you are doing server to server, how can you make it more secure? That's my question. Huh? Two-way SL, TLS, two-way TLS. So that means mutual authentication. So server to server, always do mutual authentication. So that is also going to really help you secure your system. Yeah. So that's another thing which I suggest people to use. Now let's take a look at continuous integration stages. Again, we talked about all these stages. Now, if you implement these stages, that will really help you with doing the mutant test. Now there is few more called GitRob. GitRob is a tool. You can find out if there is any sensitive information is there in your code. You need to find that information out. You can use GitRob for that particular purpose. And then checkmark scan, everybody know that's like for security purpose. You can use that. OAuth is for all the tests which you're trying to run. So if you want to run UI tests, basically see, how is there any vulnerability or not, you can use OAuth for that purpose. Okay, so let's take a look at our continuous deployment. So within, few minutes, we were able to complete that. That's a good thing. Let's take a look at continuous deployment. In this case, infrastructure testing. So the question we are trying to ask is, are we doing infrastructure testing or not? That means the code which deploys everything, are we testing that or not? That's another thing. So there are few things which are there. Soak test is there, load test is there, shadowing is there, tap wire is there. So you need to do all those things to find out the problems in the infrastructure testing. Okay, and then when you're doing the release management, you need to do canary deployment. Like canary deployment, everybody know. A/B deployment you're trying to do. Anybody you doing traffic shaping? We'll talk about that. Feature toggle. Yeah. So what is feature toggle? Anyone? Huh? You switch on and off the feature. But what is the standard functionality for feature toggle? Why do we do feature toggle? Huh? You need to do testing, that's fine. But the other thing is, how many customers do you have? If you have 10,000 customers, you want to give them time to react to it. So the way we normally do it is like, at least in our company and other companies I have seen it, is like, you have that feature off, you tell them, hey, you turn on this feature, and we give them 6 months to 1 year to make sure they turn on, make sure everything is working fine or not. So that's on their checklist. So this is called as release checklist. So what's happening is you are going to give your tenants time to react to your changes. So this is where the feature toggle really comes in and very very helpful in that case. And then CloudWatch logs is another thing where you can watching all the logs for yourself. You can do Slack integration, chatops are there, PagerDuty, I think they're here, no? They're here. So that's another very good tool to use in this case. Now, another thing you need to do is profiling. How many here do profiling? What is profiling? Huh? Profiling of the
Profiling is basically where you check how exactly your code is performing. See if there is any delay or something like that.
Yes, so you are trying to find out over the trend how that looks like. So that's one type of profiling you need to do. Another type of profiling is customer profiling. How they are using the system. So I use the credit card, but I'm using the credit card at 2 a.m. at night. I am asking for more money. Possibly there is a fraud. So those kind of monitoring also. So the profiling of the user, profiling of the habit of how they're using it, and also of the application and the functions which we are trying to use. Absolutely, we need to do that. Tracing and auditing also we need to do here. Okay, so let's take a look at this one here first. So what really happening is stress testing is you're trying to break the system. I don't do the testing. I think nobody does stress testing. That's too expensive. You're breaking the system, does not really work. But this load testing is what is very important for us to do. So what is load testing? How do you do that? Anyone? Simulate the number of users. But you know what? Don't do load testing. This is what I tell them. What's the best thing to do? Pure path. Do the pure path first. So because people start doing ramp up testing, 10, 20, 40, 100, that's the ramp up testing you do. But that is not good. You need to do pure path first. Once you do the pure path, now the pure path is done, you know exactly how that is working. And 90% of the bugs are in pure path only. What I have seen. Because you find out within single thread itself, you're going to find out issues. Multi-threaded will be right after that. So spike testing is another one. This is another thing which is like something called a spike testing. What is spike testing means? Anyone? Huh? Yeah, this is brushed. Huh? So pure path is, okay, let me write down pure path. Pure path means single user is doing that action, and behind the scene your telemetry it, like we are using elk stack or some way of collecting the logs, and then you see end to end in the UI layer what layer is taking more time. That is called pure path.
It's a kind of
Single user test. That is called pure path for that. Now Pure path can also be done for multi-users because a lot of users are using it and you are able to find that information also. But this is for single user. I suggest to do that first. Then you ramp up and see how that works. That's another thing which you do. Now soak testing is where you're running it for 5 days, 6 days and see how that works on a stress testing. That's what we do here. I think more other things are clear. But spike testing needs to be, how do you find what the spike number is? Anyone? What is the spike number? Huh? Average times 10 is spike. Average time 5 or 10 is spike. So that's the way to actually calculate what the spike testing number is looks like for you. Now, people always say that, hey, I want to do the testing. I want to do the testing, but I want production data. How many here say that? We all say that, yeah? Say, I need production data. I don't know how to test it, yeah? Because give me production data, I'll test it. Now we are seeing PII data and testing it out, We feel proud about it, yeah? So that's fine. But how do we protect ourselves in order to do that? Let me explain you that. So what you can do is there is a tool called Mocaro. Let me show you. So Mocaro this is a Mocaro tool. So and I'm going to just go to my schema first. And let me sign in. I think I did not sign in yet. So in the Mocaro, what we are trying to do, see this here. So I have ID and other things. Let's add one more field here. And this field, let's say credit card. Are you guys able to see it? A little bit better now? Yeah. So credit card I'm adding. So what you can do is now you can pick credit card from here, commerce. Let me go to commerce here. And I can pick credit card. I want this credit card field. All the types of credit cards are part of this. Now what I can do is I can generate a JSON object, I can generate a SQL object and other objects. That means I can actually populate my database also from this perspective. So now what I can do is I can actually preview this data, which is actually I can preview the JSON object previewing right now here. 1000 is generated for me. So similar to that, I can say, okay, I don't want this, I want CSV format. Okay, preview the data for me. How easy it is to put this in. Now what it does is, if you see here, it has got domain. So if I add another field, you'll be able to find out what I'm saying here. It has got car domain, crypto domain, healthcare. Anybody from healthcare? Yeah, so you can use that. Commerce, a lot of people are from commerce. Construction domain, all domains are here. So airport codes, including everything is here. So now these are randomly generated fields. Random generated field. Not only that, what other thing which you can do is that you're going to get these fields here. But now you can also, which I don't have time right now to do it, but you can look at the scenarios which they have got. You can create a scenario where you have a master and detail, order and order detail, and product. You can all generate here. How about that? Now you don't have a choice. Now you get actual testing done before going to production. That's the key thing. This is the right way to test, because what's happening is we're going to deployment. Oh, give me the production data. Now, if you are getting the production data, what do you need to do? Anyone? All the PII data need to be masks, because otherwise, your compliance issue, which will come in that case. All right. So there is another tool called generatedata.com. So let me show you that. These are the two tools I use very regularly. So let's see. So generatedata.com is similar to that one, but it does. I can pick some of the fields here. Now I can generate a SQL. So I'm just generating a SQL for myself. It is. So it's able to generate a SQL with some data coming for me, right? So let's take a look at from our perspective. So now our testing will be good, because we have got good data to work with. Now when I'm working with the data, so first thing which we need to do is we're going to pull the request. We install the software, we deploy the software into test environment. Everybody does that, by the way. But then when we deploy to the test environment, we capture all the logs and then we do the security check. say that, hey, whether there is any vulnerability or not, and then have some level of checks on that, like saying that, hey, this is a blocking vulnerability, you need to fix it right away. So that's something which you can do. So let's take a look at canary deployment. So canary, when I'm doing a canary deployment, the reason I'm doing it is because there is a newer code being added. When the newer version of the code is added, you want to test it out with smaller set of people. API, let's say you add a new API. You want to test it out. So how are you going to test it out? You give it to a smaller set. Netflix does that, by the way. Netflix, somebody, in Chennai, in small places, they're watching 3 movies. They target only those people. And then make sure that, the newer code is tested using that. So that's the way Netflix does that. So another thing which you can do is Hurricane. So think about Hurricane pattern. So this is a pattern which I devised, which is called as Hurricane pattern. So what is Hurricane pattern means? So what you're trying to do is, the category 1 means you're trying to define the features here. Okay, feature 1, and then this is the feature 1, feature 2. Feature 2. Now what happens when there is a Hurricane 5 is coming or Hurricane 4 is coming? There are some features which you will not need. You can disable those features. Anybody use Slack? Yeah? Or you use Teams, yeah? Teams, Slack, or something else you use. So there is a feature there, the other person is typing to us. Is that an essential feature? It's not an essential feature. You know what Microsoft does? They turn off that feature when the load goes up. So you are monitoring the load. If the load goes up, they turn off that feature. So that's what they are actually. So instead of just one turn off, what I'm saying is you create a categorization of these features and turn them off without adding new hardware. You solve this problem. You see, so that's another thing which you can do as part of the work. Okay, this is another question which I have. Now you have 3 choices here. Okay, number 1, business critical application, email and recreation. Tell me, looking at this, which one should get more priority? Business critical application, yes. So that is called as traffic shaping, where you want to shape the traffic and give the VIP user VIP treatment. People say that we have one API gateway and one endpoint. Why? Why do you need one endpoint? Why can't that be 2 endpoints? One for the VIP customer, one for the regular customer. Behind the scene, you have to hook it up. Yeah, that's pretty much what you need to do. So in API gateway, what you can do is, let me show you how you can do this one. So what you normally do is, when you're trying to create from the API gateway perspective, you are making a call, and then based on the deployment strategy, now you're going to have 2 different API gateways. So that way you are more protected. You can protect yourself. You can actually do throttling in the API gateway itself. You don't have to do anything else. Yeah. So that way, these are business critical people, and then be able to work on those people. Yeah. That is called a traffic shaping. Another thing is container. You think about, I'm filling a container. Now all the requests are going through one container. Is that a good thing? Not a good thing, yeah? So what you can do is, you have a max priority also coming in this. Now, what you need to do is, you need to see priority queue. This is where the priority queue comes in. So how do you implement a priority queue? So general question, there's nothing to do with what you're saying. But you're trying to find out if there is a critical message coming in, you're going to give that a first priority. Yeah. So that's what you're trying to implement, this particular solution. So either you create separate buckets for them, or you implement the priority queue. That's something you have to understand. And that's the value which is going to help you now have the pipeline go through well. That's very, very important for you to understand. Now, chatops is another application. I think anybody implemented this solution. You are just looking at the teams are using Slack. They don't even go to any other place. Some of my deployment teams, I'm not the deployment team person, but they just deploy from Slack itself. Deploy from Slack, and then they get error message in Slack. If the incident happened, it happens in Slack. It resolved, get in Slack. So that's the way, you instead of Slack, you can put Teams. Doesn't matter, because the plugins are available for all of them. But this is something which I suggest you to do. You have an incident, It took place within 2 hours. The incident was resolved. What were the things which we did to resolve that instance? Yeah. So what we talked about right now is infrastructure testing. We looked at release testing. We looked at monitoring aspect of it, incident response, and then production testing. So that's something which we finished. Now this is the manifesto which has been from our perspective. Lean to always say no. Data security of science. That's it. So these are the main thing which you need to do as a manifesto. Just Agile manifesto is there. This is the manifesto which is there from the security perspective which you need to implement. This is from AWS, by the way. You can just implement this one. This is going to help you implement the solution well. Let's take a look at KPIs. What are the key KPIs which are there important for us to use? Now, key KPI perspective is, first of all, you need to create those KPIs. So these are the key KPIs which I normally look at. The first thing is mean time to recover. So actually I look at 3 of them: mean time to detect, mean time to recover, and mean time, lead time. So the lead time, why lead time is important? What is lead time, anyone? Product owner is telling you something. It is getting in production. Is it 3 months? Is it 2 months? Is it 1 month? You have to reduce that time. The faster you can reduce that time, the faster you can reflect to what the market really wants at any given time. So that's the reason that is important. Another thing is availability. Whenever we are calling availability, one service is calling another service, another microservice. What's happening to the availability? Is going down. So you need to make sure that you are creating a parallel path. So that's where we put a load balancer, and then that's the way we get the higher availability for us. So that's the reason we do the high availability to implement that particular solution. So these are the important numbers: mean time between failures and mean time to recover. You can recover only when you can detect it. You agree? Yeah. So what you need to work on is mean time to detect, MTTD. That's what my major thing which I always look at when I work on the solution. Okay. Another thing is availability. There are availability calculators available for us to use. I would not go over that right now. You can go on your own. You can calculate how much is your availability, and did you breach any availability or not. You have to sometime give SLAs. So if you breach an SLA, you have to pay money to your client. So that's what you can calculate, how much money you're going to lose because of that reason. So what happens is you can have multiple availability levels can be there. Now 99% is perfectly fine for batch processing. You want to do batch processing is perfectly fine. And then if you want to do 99.99%, that means video. If you want to do ATM transaction, that means 99.999%. That's something you have to build. You are bound to lose transactions. If you lose transaction, what do? Anyone? Now this I am talking about production issue. That's the reason deployment. These are all deployment issues which can come in. If you get a deployment issue, you need to detect and correct it as soon as possible. That's what you need to do here. So what I'm going to do is, so this is an important one to understand. So you need to diagnose the issue, repair the issue. These are the 2 things which are important. And this is the mean time between the failure, which we need to keep in mind when we are building the solution. Okay. So what that means from CI pipeline perspective, this is important. So cycle time is like the whole time between product manager and we are coming to our solution. But QA is MTTD, mean time to detect, and mean time to recover is when the developer is fixing that issue for us when we are building this. Okay. Now, so what I mean to say is that why lead time is important, because it makes it faster for us to use as an implementation solution. So Gardner is saying is in 2020 you need to have what? Composable architectures. If you build composable architectures, that will help you build your solutions much faster. If you can build a solution in 15 days, that's what this is really talking about here. Okay, platform metrics. Let's take a look at that. So overall average time for each of the top 10 frequently executed database queries. Now this is where we used to call it AWR reports. Anybody from Oracle land, and SQL Server has a similar kind of thing is there, where you need to find out what are the average time of execution for the fastest query, and what happens in the time series. When you're working on the time series, how that takes place over time, how you're working on this. So that's what you get out of this one. Now what you need to do, you need to track in a dashboard and say these are the error messages which are coming in. If you get an error message, maybe that is due to deployment issues, maybe this is due to on an average how that value is coming through. Okay, now let's take a look at how to connect the business KPIs to platform KPIs. Something important to understand. So business KPIs are very simple to connect. You want to find out hey, this is survey you're doing, CSAT score. You can find out how much volume your company has purchased at any given time. Those things you're trying to find out here, yeah? So what happens is you want to find out cash flow, earnings. So what happens is, this is by the way from Gartner. You can actually search online, you should be able to get the same image. But here, look at this here. Cost per transaction. You want to reduce the cost per transaction. If you reduce the cost per transaction, that will help us improve the response time. So now these are the indicators which are business value indicator, customer value which we are trying to provide. Now when you are trying to get incidents, if you create a microservice for that incident, what's happening is, now I am able to help the customer satisfaction. So this is the way, if you say that, hey, I got to implement my technical debt, and that never get prioritized. If you can say that, if you can tie up with this, mean time to detect can directly tie up with lead time, which you're trying to create. This is the way you're mapping your services. Make sense? Yeah. That's another thing which you can do in this case. So how do we connect these dots? That means what we are trying to say is that, hey, how much business do we have? So if you see here in the logs here, it's taking 1.1 second to log in, somebody to log in. Why is it taking that much amount of time? So we need to kind of find out those details and then say over time why the errors have increased. Like we did a deployment and the errors started increasing. So that's what we need to find out in this particular case. Okay. Now, so we don't need to guess the capacity. We need to make sure that predict what the capacity looks like. That's another thing which comes in, like, you should be able to know how much volume of data is coming in. This is cyclical data. It's in the daytime it will increase and nighttime it will decrease. So you need to find out what that looks like. So now there are tools available which can do forecasting for you. So AWS has a forecasting tool which you can use, and it will actually predict how much servers do you need automatically without you actually working on it. All right. So now let's take a look at from the scalability perspective what things we need to do. Scalability perspective, like, we are trying to say here, x-axis, y-axis. Now we are trying to create the microservices here. Now, when we are trying to build the microservices, what are the things which are important for the microservice perspective? It is basically number of requests per second. That's a very good measure to have. How many requests are coming? I always ask this question, by the way. How many requests are coming per second? Depending upon that, the architecture will change. If the request per second coming for something is 5,000 requests per second, we know what we can use. Yeah, we can use first in first out queue is still fine. We can use that. But if the request per second is 100,000 requests per second, in that case you have to use some other tool like Kafka to collect the data and start using that. Or you need to divide that into smaller pieces. Divide 100,000 requests into smaller pieces while in motion. And then be able to do that. Number of failed requests per second, distribution across the service throttling. So those things which we can do using that model. API gateway can be used to improve the performance. How we can improve the performance of the API gateway? You cache the data in the API gateway. You can cache the data, say that, hey, cache this data for 5 minutes. My price will remain the same. But that will help you. Burst requests, millions of requests coming in. Now somebody said, I got millions of requests coming in. I tell them, hey, you cache the data. That is one way to protect yourself when you're building this solution. You TTL that data, and you can also do canary deployment when you're doing this. Now, when you're building the serverless functions, something which you have to keep in mind is that concurrent how many concurrent users are using at a time. Now serverless can expand, but you don't want to expand that much. You have to reduce it. You don't want to expand that much, which will cause you, problem in this case. So that's something you have to keep in mind when building the solution. That's where the telemetry comes in. I think we got like 5 more minutes. So let me see which is important part here, and I'm going to only discuss that. Now you need to enable distributed tracing. Anybody here using Dynatrace or New Relic, X-Ray? Anybody using that? If you use ElkStack also, it also has a way of connecting. That's where you get the distributed tracing available for you, where you can actually find out where the bug is. So where is exactly the bug in our code? Now you can use Java code also. If you're using Java, you can use SPF4J framework to really perform that operation. So that's another thing which you can use, which is a Java code, which can actually give you more information how we are using it. So that's another thing which is important. You can use open tracing also if you want to build that solution. In the end, the important thing is from my perspective, whenever we are building the solution, operational excellence, how do you get it? By creating playbooks. Playbooks means like, if you're doing, if you play soccer or football, there's an offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. Yeah. You want to create playbooks for all of them. And then create a run book. If something goes wrong, what do you need to do to protect yourself? That's what you need to do. And make small changes, frequent changes when you're building the solution, and refine the procedure and anticipate the failures. You think that the failure is happening and reduce that blast radius. You want to reduce that blast which is happening. That is containing the failure. That's what you need to do. When you do that, how do you do that? Whenever any user is logging in, you send it to the CloudWatch logs to get the trail, what issues are there, and then work on fixing that particular issue. Okay, and then that's where the business value comes in when we are building this particular solution. At the end, let me show you this one. So this is the DevSecOps. How do we monitor the DevSecOps? So this is kind of a dashboard, how many EC2 instances you have. Now you can actually find out where it's taking more time, and then kind of fix that particular issue here. Now you can see, hey, what node is not working? At a dashboard level, you can actually look at it. You can find out the anomaly detection. This is through the time series you can find out the anomaly detection. Now heat map, this is called a heat map. CPU usage increased on Monday 5th. After 12, it increased. That means roll back your code because there is a CPU increase in the load. So this is the Datadog, this is the tool you can use to find out that information. Now you have a specific way to fix the issues using CloudTrail, and you give like, hey, this instance failed, and be able to provide the solution. So that's it, guys. I know it was a great syncing up with you. I hope you enjoyed the session. Connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. All the slides are here. At the end, if you go back to here, let me just tell you about one more thing, and then we are done with this one. So if you see here, I have got cheat sheet also. Cheat sheet is there. The QA say that how do I test it? I don't know how to test it. I did all my testing. Give them this spreadsheet. They're going to say thank you to you. Because in this spreadsheet, it keeps all the things they should test from testing perspective when you're building the solution. So that's what this spreadsheet is telling you, and it will go through all the listing how to test the solution. So I suggest you do that. Apart from that, threat modeling is also here. You can look at it on your own. So thank you so much, guys.